Hi everyone, welcome to our channel Bella Poetry Presents. My name is Bella and I love beautiful poetry and I'm happy to present it to you. In this segment of our second series, The Best Loved Poetry and the Poets That Penned It, we will discuss another American poet, Frederick Ogden Nash. He was well known for his light verse, of which he wrote over 500 pieces. Frederick Ogden Nash was born on August 19, 1902. With his unconventional rhyming schemes, he was declared by the New York Times the country's best-known producer of humorous poetry. He was born in Rye, New York on Milton Point. He was the son of Mattie and Edmund Nash. Nash was the descendant of Abner Nash, who was the early governor of North Carolina. His father operated and owned a turpentine company. And because he had a business like that, he had to travel a lot, which meant that the family had to relocate a few times to different places in the United States. They lived in Savannah, they lived in Georgia, and in some other places. His mother brought the children very well by instilling in them the importance of good discipline. Ogden Nash loved to collect frogs. He didn't like so much to play with children when he was a boy, with girls especially. He began writing verse when he turned 6 years old, which was quite remarkable. Throughout his life, Nash loved to rhyme, and he said himself, "I think in terms of rhyme and have thought like that since I was 6 years old." He stated it in 1958 news interview. He had a fondness of crafting his own words whenever rhyming words did not exist, but admitted that crafting rhymes was not so easy as it seemed. Ogden Nash began his early education in a school located in Rye. He later studied as a boarder at a school in Groton, Massachusetts. He was 10 years old at the time. Unfortunately, he developed some eye condition and eye complications, and he had to drop out of school. And during these few years, his mother homeschooled him. Luckily, his eye problems went away and he returned to school. In 1917, he joined St. George's School in the county of Newport, located in Rhode Island. Ogden Nash was a very bright student. He did very well in his studies. He was the champion of French and Latin, which earned him a lot of prizes. So he graduated in 1920, upon which he joined Harvard University. But he dropped his studies in 1921 when his parents could not afford his fees. The family business was not doing so well at the time. He returned to New York, and there he took up selling bonds, and he was not extremely successful doing that. He wrote himself, as usually with his delightful sense of humor, "Came to New York to make my fortune as a bond salesman, and in 2 years sold 1 bond to my godmother. However, I saw a lot of good movies." So later, Nash took a position as a writer in a streetcar card ads for Baron Collier, the company that had employed another very famous Baltimore resident, F. Scott Fitzgerald. While working as an editor at Doubleday, he submitted some short rhymes to the New Yorker. The editor, Harold Ross, wrote to Nash and asked for more poetry from him. And he said, these are about the most original poems we have had lately. In 1931, when Ogden Nash turned 29 years old, he published his first collection of poetry titled Hard Lines, and it earned him national recognition. He portrayed the wicked ways of politicians with his work. And he brought this out in a very characteristic to him, witty and humorous way. This made his work stand tall among other poems at the time. He featured in television and radio shows, sometimes in 1940s. He also started writing children's stories. When Nash was not writing poetry, he made guest appearances on comedy and radio shows and toured the United States and the United Kingdom and gave lectures in colleges and universities. So Nash was regarded with respect by the literary establishment, and his poems were often anthologized even in serious collections like Selden Rodman's 1946 A New Anthology of of Modern Poetry. Among his most popular writings were a series of animal verses, many of which featured his off-kilter rhyming devices. For example, he wrote, "If called by a panther, don't answer. Who wants my jellyfish? I am not jellyfish." The best of his work was published in 14 volumes between 1931 and 1972. Nash was best known for surprising pun-like rhymes, as we said already, sometimes with words deliberately misspelled, as we cited before. We showed it as an example, like, I am not a jellyfish, I'm a jellyfish. As in his retort to Dorothy Parker's humorous dictum, men seldom make passes at girls who wear glasses. Nash wrote humorous poems for each movement of the Camille Saint-Saëns orchestral composition, The Carnival of the Animals, which are sometimes recited when the work is performed. So he published also some poems for children, including The Adventures of Isabel. Ogden Nash tied the knot with Francis Leonard when he was 29 years old in 1931, the same year that his first book of poetry came out, and they were blessed with two daughters, Isabel and Linnell. In 1934, Nash moved his family to his in-laws' mansion in Guilford, Baltimore, Maryland, and he remained there until his death in 1971 at the age of 69. Nash loved Baltimore. He thought of it as home. One time when he returned from New York to Baltimore, he wrote, "I could have loved New York had I not loved Baltimore." So again, his delightful sense of humor. His books include Hard Lines that was published in 1931, I Am a Stranger Here Myself, published in 1938, and Everyone But Thee and Me, published in 1962. He also collaborated on the Broadway musicals One Touch of Venus in 1942 and Two's Company in 1952. Nash's daughter was married to noted photographer Frederick Eberstadt. His granddaughter, Frances Smith, is an author. Granddaughter Fernanda Eberstadt is an acclaimed author. And his grandson is political economist Nicholas Eberstadt. Nash had one other daughter who is also an author, whose name is, as we said before, Linnell Nash Smith. So his children and his grandchildren, some of them followed in his steps. Ogden Nash died in Baltimore's Johns Hopkins Hospital on May 19, 1971, of Crohn's disease. It was aggravated by a stomach infection transmitted by improperly prepared coleslaw. I'm sure if he lived, he would have written a humorous poem about that as well. He's buried in Eastside Cemetery in Northampton, New Hampshire. I always read quotes by famous poets, and I will read two of his quotes. The first one: marriage is the alliance of two people, one of whom never remembers birthdays and the other who never forgets them, which is quite true, actually. To keep your marriage brimming with love in the loving cup, whenever you're wrong, admit it. Whenever you're right, shut up. And we will read a couple of his love poetry. The first one is called To My Valentine. More than a catbird hates a cat, or a criminal hates a clue, or the Axis hates the United States, that's how much I love you. I love you more than a duck can swim, and more than a grapefruit squirts. I love you more than a gin rummy is a bore, and more than a toothache hurts. As a ship-track sailor hates the sea, or a juggler hates a shove, as a hostess detests unexpected guests, that's how much you I love. I love you more than a wasp can stink, and more than a subway jerks. I love you as much as a beggar needs a crutch, and more than a hangnail irks. I swear to you by the stars above and below, if such there be, as the high court loathes perjurious oaths, that's how you're loved by me. Such a humorous, wonderful poem. And the second poem that we'll read by him is called Always Marry an April Girl. Praise the spells and bless the charms I found April in my arms. April golden, April cloudy, gracious, cruel, tender, rowdy. April soft in flowered languor. April cold with sudden anger. Ever-changing, ever true. I love April. I love you. Thank you so much for visiting Bella Poetry Presents. I hope you enjoyed our short and informative segment about the life and poetry of Ogden Nash. Please visit us next week. We will talk about a very interesting, eventful, romantic, passionate life of Pablo Neruda and read some of his love poems. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support is very, very important. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye-bye.